Welcome to the shit show. Welcome to the shit show. Let's do this.
Welcome back, guys.
Welcome back.
As we said, this is part 2 of the same conversation. Although I want to start off with a slight, lighthearted moment. Although it's not that lighthearted, but I wanted to show you this video. I think this guy wants to wished he had an abortion after this.
Okay.
All right, take gloves.
Is that powerful?
Yeah, that was good.
Yeah, that was good, dude. Thanks, son.
All right, take
Yeah, I'm gonna.
gloves.
Oh.
Is that powerful?
Yeah, that was good.
Don't teach your kids to hit you.
That's kind of funny though, and obviously I'm just playing little sucker punch by a kid's not gonna make me want to abort them in the past.
I might punch back. See, that's why I shouldn't have. That's why we need abortion. Some crazy bitches don't need kids.
Hey, and on that topic, not even just crazy bitches, just in general, there's so many situations and so many reasons why women in general would not want to have a kid.
Yes.
So let me show you this other video. So this is Rage Against the Machine at a concert that they had when it's like one of the newest concerts they've had, just because they're coming back. They're gonna start writing an album apparently. That was loud. So their music's playing on this video, so I won't play it, but I want you to see what they were putting behind, like on the screen. Yeah, so they have
capture the messaging on the big.
They have 4 different ones. It says forced birth in a country that is the only wealthy country in the world without any guaranteed paid parental leave at the national level. So you can see where it's kind of building up to.
Yeah.
So we're the only country, first world country, that doesn't have any paid parental leave at the national level.
Yes.
Forced birth in a country where black birth givers experience
maternal mortality 2 to 3 times higher than that of white birth givers.
Exactly. These are facts that people aren't really talking about when they bring up it's just we need to save babies' lives. It's like, okay, but what about the mother? Especially if it's a black mother or darker skin in general, they're gonna more than likely have a higher chance of dying in a hospital. And those are things you've mentioned to me in the past.
Yes. I feel very strongly for these things, and I love Rage Against the Machine.
Yeah,
they rage against the machine. That should make sense to everyone. Apparently, people don't like that they're political, and
that's what they are.
Like they have one of them has a PhD in political science, and if they didn't have that education, politics is basically a summary of our morals. And I feel like the fetishization of political parties is disturbing, because it's like you can be gun-ho Republican and everything, but at the end of the day, you're still going to end up in the same dirty dirt that we all came from. You're still the same filth that I am inside. And it should bother you that you feel negative towards me from telling you that, because it is the, what's it called, the black pill or whatever, but I just call it logic.
Well, I think black pill is more like, I feel black pilled sometimes, but it's just because I feel so utterly helpless to do anything to help the world out that I just don't care anymore. And I just don't want to care, but I have to fight against that.
Yeah. And so that's why you need to Rage Against the Machine.
Yeah. Well, it's like if I was at a Rage Against the Machine concert and someone's like, I hate that he said fuck Trump. Like, what are you talking about? Like,
you should hate yourself for saying that.
Do you even know who they are? Oh my God.
Do you even know who you are? And that, yes, there's so much I could talk about those facts too.
Yeah. I mean, I want you to. There's a lot of different facts. I mean, going back to the video, it shows another thing they put back, like behind them as they're playing. It says forced birth in a country where gun violence is the number 1 cause of death among children and teenagers.
Yeah.
Like, how do you feel about bringing a child into a world where, like, most children are dying from being assaulted with guns at school?
I just feel like in terms of the US, it's like delayed abortion.
Wow.
Because at the end of the day, you probably didn't want those kids in the first place if you were willing to kill them. or if
Well, it's
someone was
kind of
willing to kill them
it's
for
kind
you.
of what like you were mentioning in the last episode where you were saying that the rich get richer, the poor get poorer, they get stuck in these cycles. And I think this has to do ultimately with it, where
Yeah,
obviously people that have more money can keep their children in a
private
private
school.
school, safer school.
Like, I guess it takes me to like the concept of coddling. Like, where boys were raised with certain boundaries and you weren't exposed to certain dangers and hazards like women are.
Yeah.
So, but I'm not saying that boys aren't exposed to them. It's just more common on women because it's easier to, um,
Well, you're
de-
seen as a target
we're seen as
more often.
degenerates, like people are willing to like, not degenerates, degrading objects. Like people are willing to
Yeah.
degrade us. Like it's almost like, and I forgot to say this in the point of view of the other one, where it's like a baby making machine.
Yeah.
I feel like men date women, men who aren't truly straight, they hate women, but they're just with women because the society expects them to, or they've been raised to want women.
But they've been raised to want a family
Yeah.
and have kids.
And there's nothing wrong with wanting a family, but there is something wrong with not knowing how to be in a family and expecting it to be perfect when you yourself are not perfect.
Yeah.
When you yourself, like when you have kids and when you have families, and if you are parents out there, you have to understand you're raising a human being who's full of conflict, who has their own thoughts, and that's your own kids. And they're full of thoughts. They're gonna be carrying like some of the shit that you've been carrying, and they're gonna throw it in your face. You have to be ready to mentally prepare for that before you ever have a kid. Like a child is a reflection of you. And if that child is abused, sexually abused especially, it just goes to reflect what kind of world we fucking live in. Because the fact that there's even one child being abused tells me that we are not pro children. We're pro first birth. And if anything, like, as someone who was like a little like sexualized when I went to church and stuff, like I had some religious trauma there. I just feel like the pro birthers or pro first birth, like it's like you're enjoying the fruits of being part of a religion when you do that. But when you put your kids through that system and they're alone because you're a religious fanatic, your child is more likely to be sexually abused.
Yeah.
And your child is more likely, and that is generally the purpose of like, unfortunately, like Catholic religion or like Christianity. And I'm not saying this about Christians really, but I'm saying it about the organizational leaders who basically fool these wonderful, loving people into being Christians, but yet don't provide that Christian love to people who are different. And that bothers me because, like, regardless of religion, you should still want to be a good person to everyone else. Like, it's pathetic if you don't.
Yeah.
Like, if someone's a Muslim or if someone's an atheist or like Satanist in any type of way, you should want to ask them why. Were they raised that way? What's the logic? Because if you were a Christian, you most likely were forcefully indoctrinated as a child without really having a choice.
Yeah.
And what we can learn about other religions is choice. And you remove that choice when you make people feel like they don't have one. So when I was a little kid going through church, like I thought I had no choice other than to go to hell. Because I had terrible thoughts as a little kid, and no one told me they were like intrusive thoughts, but they were thoughts that I amplified as a little kid.
Yeah.
So if I was able to think about suicide at 5 years old, and that's not okay as a 5-year-old.
I mean, yeah, it shouldn't be a thing the 5-year-olds think about.
Yeah. There's something wrong in the society, because it's like no child is left uncorrupt being a child. Like, you may think children are resilient. Yeah, that's cool and all. But the thing is, they're still going to remember that or carry it in some shape or form. And what bothers me is that people want to put children through that tumble of society that just is willing to exploit them any chance they get. Like, I don't think people should be forced to give birth. And the fact that women who don't want kids are being forced to give birth is is disturbing to me because you end up with more kids who are unwanted
Unstable.
and being sent to foster homes or being adopted out to families. Just the fact that you're even separated from a home, if you were allowed to be in that home and loved in any type of way, just the separation of from your own family, let's say by adoption or maybe the parents passed away, that's traumatizing in itself because you lost half of your community. You lost any hope that you have an example of what it's like to survive as an adult. So with kids who go through like a world of being like shot at school, like, you know, when I was in elementary school, school shootings weren't foreign to me because I lived in a low income neighborhood full of like Latinos, and it was almost expected.
Not the scary Latinos.
The scary Latinos.
I mean, it was all Latinos, so.
Yeah, but because we were brown kids, like no one gave a shit. The most cops ever did around me was follow me once to home. And it was only once when I walked home by myself. And they were watching me and they were asking me about my parents and where they were from. And they were looking more like to see if I was like a anchor baby.
Oh, they're like, well,
they're like, well,
you think you might be one of them illegals, or maybe your parents just had you here?
Exactly. So they were trying to walk me home to my parents to find them. like there's so much violence in my neighborhood, Copper. Like, you could stop it anytime
Didn't
you
you
want.
once tell me that you woke up and there was just like a bloody palm on your window?
There was a bloody palm on a car parked in front of our house, and there was a puddle of blood in front of our yard because someone had been shot there the night before. But I didn't really get to see the body, thankfully. But just seeing the blood there was kind of like, okay.
It's enough to just be like,
we stay behind the gate. Okay.
Something's wrong here.
Something's not okay. So why would you want kids to go through that? You know, like, why would you, like, if you don't fix that, then you obviously don't care about kids. You're not taking the time to learn about kids and how amazing they can be, how great learners they can be, how they can teach us so much about ourselves. But no, you force them to go to schools without any skills. You know, and I remember that myself because when I was in elementary school, I was a pretty big loner. Like, I did not have the skills to be like a well-rounded kid. I forced
like
myself
socially acceptable in a way.
Yeah, and because I was bad at school, well, ADHD, undiagnosed.
Same.
I just thought, okay, I can't have friends because I can't focus. Because if I find anything fun or joyful, I feel guilty about it because I can't do well in school. So you're leaving people with parents who have no interest in learning about mental health. Like, how are you going to help your kid if they're thinking about suicide? And all you're going to tell them is like, oh, just get over it. Or you have nothing to be suicidal about. Like, that's bullshit. Like, there's everything. There's everything. There's like people dying halfway across the world. Like, what keeps me up at night
like,
is...
I feel like I was lucky enough to grow up in the time I grew up because it was like when I was a younger kid, I didn't have it that bad. I mean, apart from any kind of dysfunctional family issues and then some gang related stuff at home, like not at home, but like in my community. Like overall, I feel like I don't have as many like mental issues as I would have had if I'd be growing up right now. Because one thing I do know is that kids aren't supposed to be like as stressed as they are just going to school, just trying to be taught, especially at that young of an age.
Yeah.
And it really just kind of makes me fear for the future because, yeah, like how are you going to bring a child into this world knowing that like they're just not going to be there mentally, like they're going to have so many anxiety issues, especially when you're not even able to face those issues yourself. You're not even like working on them within your own mind. Like, how are you bringing someone into the world, you know?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's like whenever I think about me being a parent, it's like, am I prepared to lose them? If I birthed it and I actually raised the baby and like lived a whole life and then all of a sudden gone. Like, we're not okay to raise kids in this world if that's what I'm thinking about, because it is a possibility every day. And I don't want that to happen to anyone else. I don't want kids to get shot. Like, I don't want guns out there. No one's safe with guns. Like, the fact that they were kept here in the US, well, it's just depressing. Because it's like, why would you keep the weapon around if you know the people are not responsible?
Yeah. And I mean, I know people talk about the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment, doesn't it technically say like you have the right to a well organized and armed militia? Like, I mean, people talk a lot about like, oh, I have every right to have my gun, but I think we have every right to join up as a military group and overtake our government if it starts like to be a tyrant, which I don't consider any of the things that it's really done to be tyrannical. I actually don't. I don't want to agree with that. There's a lot that I don't even know out there that has happened that I can't be a part of.
Yeah. So
Sorry, I kind of went off the point. I do want to show you this last quote that they put, which is just abort the Supreme Court,
yeah,
which I thought you would like.
I would like that. Yes, it would be nice. It would be nice to just get rid of them. Some of them. I agree with people having the ability to have an abortion, just like I agree having the ability to go to a gynecologist and being able to talk to them about my yeast infection and getting said medication for yeast infection. I feel like anyone who is against women's right to choose like what they do with their reproductive body, if the woman's not choosing to harm herself, like actively, put herself through torture for no reason whatsoever, or like I feel like if that's the case, women being able to choose what they do with their bodies, like you should leave them alone. You should let us do, because it's like you think I'm like the logic behind people who want to force us to give birth to babies we don't want, like it's disturbing because you're forcing me to give birth because you don't think I'm competent enough to choose not to give birth,
But to choose not to
have a baby.
Yeah.
To just like get rid of the fetus and just
I think a lot of guys would argue, and not that they're correct, but a lot of guys would say, well, like if it's their partner, a woman who wants to get an abortion, but they don't want her to get an abortion, they'd be like, well, I should have some say. And in my mind, I'm like, well, no, because she's the one that's stuck with the pregnancy for 8 months, and she's technically the one that's stuck with the, like, you can go and have sex with another woman,
yeah,
and have another baby,
yeah,
no problem.
simple.
So, like, if that's an issue between you guys as partners, and maybe you guys don't belong together. I don't know.
Exactly. And I hate the concept of that too, because at the end of the day, she's the one carrying the risk factors.
Yeah.
Like, just the fact that you're forced to give birth is one thing, but can you even make it to the date of the birth? Like, some women have super high risk pregnancy in general is a super high risk. Like, it's scary and it's not always going to succeed. And a lot of people a lot of fucking women out there get upset with themselves when it doesn't happen. And it hurts me to see them like that, because they think they're not womanly enough because they can't have a baby. But then, there's people out there who are like, well, there's women who can have kids and they're aborting. But that's the thing though. It's not our fault.
There's this channel on YouTube called The Good Liars. These two guys, they just interview a lot of different people, and they went to like a forced birth rally. It was called like pro-life, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to call these people pro-life or anti-abortion. I will call them pro-forced birth from here on in.
I call them pedophiles.
Wow. But
they love kids so much but don't want to take care of them.
They were just asking all these old ladies that had signs saying like you can adoption is always an option. And he asked these three ladies like, oh, hey, so like how many kids have you adopted? And she's like, oh, I'm not able to adopt, like I didn't qualify. And he's like, oh, so you don't adopt anyone? You haven't adopted anyone? No, I can't. It was impossible for me. Then he goes to the next lady, how many kids have you adopted? Oh no, I had to. So no adoptions. And then the other lady's like, yeah, I haven't adopted any either. Mm-hmm. And I just thought it was so funny that they're like, you can always adopt, but literally one of the three shows you like how hard it can be to even be like qualify for adoption, especially if you're like a single mom or you're just like one person or don't make enough money.
Yeah, and it's because the people who have adopted kids are actively raising them at home and having to deal with the trauma that the kids dealt with before the adoption.
Yeah.
Like when you adopt a kid, and I've listened to some people who have been adopted. It's not easy. And the people who have been adopted, like, they wish they weren't. They wish they didn't have to go through that isolation of feeling like you didn't belong. Just
Yeah.
that alone is scary. But then, like, you're not guaranteed the right family whenever you're adopted out. Because any family seems normal and quaint and cute and nice on the outside. But it's like, what are they doing on the inside that's keeping them so calm while they're out
Yeah,
here?
I mean, they have to put up a facade, right? Everyone
Hmm.
does. Everyone puts up some type of facade, but yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah. And it's the concept of manipulation that I've seen people do psychologically with wanting to mind their business. I hate that concept. It's like, if my neighbor is being stabbed to death next door, I'm going to want to help. And you should want to help too. Or at least call for help or like something. I was going to say that with the concept of people minding their business, like, you should mind your business if something has nothing to do with you. Like, if someone has a medical issue they don't want to talk about yet, or they don't want to publicly talk about it, respect them. Don't push them to explain themselves. Or if something happened in their family where they don't want to talk about it, that's understandable. But there's also something to that I don't like about that people aren't able to talk about their families easily. And it's because, like, you've been sworn to a loyalty when you're with your family.
Yeah.
And so anything that goes against, like, your family's reputation is you're seen as like a monster or something. You're seen as like, or you're talking shit about your family, or like you show no loyalty, or like your aunts will come at you like, I heard you said this about us, or like,
Damn.
hey, I heard you did this, or like. But the thing is that if what I said was correct, like if I said someone was abusive, they shouldn't be offended. They should want to like understand why I said that.
Yeah, like
They
look
should
further into it, not just
not come at it on a defensive point of view. Come at it as like, hey, I heard you said I was abusive. Is there anything in my behavior that you've seen that determines that?
well, that it's just most abusers aren't gonna
Exactly.
have those types of interactions.
But that's the thing too, though. Like, if you are not an abusive person, you should want to change. And abusive people should want to change to not be abusive too.
Yeah.
And there's all kinds of levels of abuse, and we don't notice it very often because we're used to seeing the extreme side as being the most dramatic. But even with the extreme side, we become so desensitized to it.
Yeah.
I remember hanging out with this guy, and he was some noise was going on by his neighbors, and he was like talking to me, and I was just like, what's going on there? He's like, oh, I just think it's like one of those DVs, domestic violence.
Oh no.
He's like, that's just one of those DVs. I just mind my business. It's like someone's actively being fucking killed, like emotionally and mentally, and eventually they are gonna be killed physically. Like, those are the steps. Because like a lot of men can't hang with the banter that they're putting out to the women that they're abusing.
Yeah.
Because the amount of abuse you spew at her, she's going to find a way to say it back to you. And you have to hold yourself back. And if you can't do that.
If you're already abusive, like, you're not going to take criticism like launched at you in the same way you're launching it. Well, like it's going to escalate, and unfortunately it's going to lead to some really bad things.
Absolutely. And that's the thing. I think people need to get in each other's business in that way, because it's only in that way abusers are able to get away with being able to hurt their family.
And, it's funny because I hear a lot of I hate saying like Republican, Democrat, blah blah blah, fuck that. I hate saying it, but I do hear a lot of like Republican or conservative leaning people tell me, oh, like Hispanic people, Mexican people, we have a lot in common. We have like the same traditional like family values. And to your point, I remember going to Mexico, and like in certain communities, like everyone knows that this one lady that always has her door open and you always hear her cry or you always hear some commotion, you never go by that door because the husband's a drunk, he's gonna beat her, and that's just what it's gonna be. And the whole town knows that at night you don't pass by that door, and if you do, you don't say anything, you don't mention it to anyone, you just keep your mouth shut. So to me, it's super funny that you're kind of like equivalating the same thing over here. When people say like, oh, like we have the same values, I'm like, those are the fucking values. Like, not to say that those are values everywhere in Mexico, but I'm just saying, like,
those values should not be in your world.
no.
You should want to teach people not those values. Like, you should want them to be better than that. Like, geez, like, that's horrible. Like, that poor lady.
Yeah.
And then, like, no one ever, like.
And then honestly, like, from what I understand, a lot of people in Mexico get married early on still, just like our parents did.
Yeah.
And like they're stuck in a relationship that they can't really get out of, because I'm sure like divorce rates aren't at the rate, they're not nowhere near like out here, and it's usually because of fear, just societal norms. You got to like stick with your partner. You got to like make sure you're making some kids, propagating. It's all. See, this is what black pills me. This is where I'm just like, man, fuck everything. I'm gonna just be in here playing some music, maybe smoke a cigarette every now and then. Nothing. No.
Yeah, and to that, it's like you should want things to be better for your neighbor, like, and I do see where they agree in the values, but that's just,
Yeah.
I think that's more like the misogyny that they see as their values. And that bugs me, because even in our culture, Mexican culture or like Latino culture, like, I don't like the concept that I am like seen as property, or like I'm seen as like someone who can't make their decisions, because I've been kind of treated like that half of my life, and I wish I had had more choices. I wish I had a tattoo by this time.
Yeah.
I'm still scared to get a tattoo, but I'm gonna get one. But yeah, the concept is that I do have choices, but if no one ever taught me those choices, or if I never had discovered them on my own, I would be mentally fucked up and not even know it. I would think I was normal.
Yeah.
Like, if no one ever taught me how to think for myself, like, luckily my mom was really good at teaching me like logic, and us as logic, like, we would be in a much worse place. Like, my mom taught me, like, is that what you're doing? Are you sure you're doing that? Are you sure you're doing it the right way? Like, she makes us think for ourselves. She
like,
makes us.
I don't want to, like, I'm second guessing myself now. Like, I wonder if I'm right.
Yes. And I loved my mom for that, because she always made us feel like you always had a choice. Why didn't you choose the one that would get you the least trouble?
Yeah.
And like, for me, it made sense. And like, it bothers me that not everyone is taught this. So when I would go to high school and I would see boys act the way they did, like harass me or try to talk to me a certain way, not even sexually, they were rude. And then I was rude back, because I was raised by a mother who actually stood up for herself against people. And in my head, all I could think of when people were picking on me, I'm like, if my mom or my dad hears about this, they're gonna kick my ass for not wanting to kick their ass. My dad said to me, like, if you ever get in a fight, make sure you come back with blood.
Hell yeah.
And you stop that fight immediately.
I like your dad.
And I was raised with those concepts, but not all women are. And I hate that, because it's like, we truly can defend ourselves. We truly can be serial killers. And we live amongst you, and we have that ability. But you guys don't see us as even logically or even mentally like
a threat,
capable of doing that, or even being a threat. I know I'm a threat.
But then we get all these guys that feel threatened by like little changes and like more rights and just in general like equality. And that's what I don't get. I'm like, okay, like you don't respect women, but you...
And it just goes back to how they were raised and how they're not bothering to question themselves, not bothering to think for themselves at the age of like 12 or 13. 12 or 13 is the perfect age to question your logic and to question your parents' logic, because it'll distract you, and yeah, it'll give you anxiety, but you'll make way better decisions. You need to start acting and understanding the concept of behaving like the human being you need to behave. And if your parents aren't behaving and you know better than them, that's frustrating as hell, but you're way better off in the future. And unfortunately, some people, and it goes back to like the concept of abortion and choosing to have kids. It's like, some people's parents are not right for them. Some people's parents need a fucking lecture on how to treat kids as people. Because some people just think like their kids are like trash, you know. And
And
then
some people just shouldn't have kids.
and oh my gosh, I wanted to mention this.
Sure.
It grosses me out to see it online, and it grosses me out to see it in person. People, even women, sexualizing little girls and teaching them to conform to look less sexual around men.
Yeah.
And there's boys who are being pushed to see women that way, being pushed to see girls that way.
Yeah.
Because there was a video once on TikTok of a little boy. He was at a party for some fucking reason. A 5-year-old was at a party, and the dad asked this girl to like basically twerk on the little kid.
Oh,
and the kid was like,
no.
yeah, you know, having a good time, and everyone around him was having a blast with it. But the thing for me, it's like, why are you letting your kid
Why are you
be like fucking like, I don't know, danced on by an older woman? That is a
Wait,
child.
it was an older woman?
It was like a lady, like
I thought it was like they made 2 children do that to each other.
Oh no, even that's bad.
No,
like that's
yeah,
disgusting too. But they made an older woman who was already probably like a stripper or like a dancer or whatever dance on this little kid. And the lady was having it, like she was smiling, and that bothered me too. It's like, ma'am.
It's like the same thing where like whenever like a high school teacher that's a woman has sex with like a younger like student.
Yes, that's disgusting.
The guy's like, oh, I would have been lucky to have something like that happen to me. Good for you, you fucking weirdo. Like that's not a
You
normal
shouldn't
thing
want that.
we should be allowing our kids to go through.
You
like,
should. You're gross if you want that, because it's like, it just goes to show that like you really like are looking for a mom. You're looking for someone to take care of you. And for people who say like, oh, that kid's lucky to be like in that position or lucky to like be around boobies or whatever, it's like the kid didn't really have a choice. The kid didn't have a choice to think about what's like. I think of sex as I think about computers. They just are. We just.
I'll throw this in there. I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
I was just gonna say, I know for a fact, like from when I was introduced to any kind of like sexualizing, like even whether it was like porn or just being told about certain things when I was younger, now to this day I'm realizing it affected me a lot, just in my actions, my behaviors, and those are kind of like programmings I'm trying to shed, but it affects you a lot. Like as a little kid, if you twerked on by an older woman, like you're probably gonna go through some weird stuff later on in life.
Yeah, you're not going to respect women. You're going to be one of those weirdos who can't even be in a committed relationship but wants to possess women. But it's like, do you even like women to begin with? I don't think a lot of men like women. A lot of men who claim to be straight, like hardcore males and like, you know, like red-blooded, like, I don't think they're straight. I think you guys love being around men more than you like women, and that should concern you more than the idea that your woman is out having fun with her friends. Like she is part of a group. She is part of a community. And that's how I was talking about the other one. It's like, as a community, we all need to decide what we want to do and how we want to live in our families. And you may think I'm like, well, people should mind their business. It's like, no, people shouldn't. People minding their business kills people. People minding their business, like,
well, I mean, because people were minding their business and not really getting as upset about like this whole abortion law now, I think women are gonna die.
Women are dying already.
Yeah, exactly. So, and that's kind of what I'm getting out of this whole thing more. And I thank you for bringing that up to me, where I'm so black-pilled that I just don't want to care, and I just don't want to. I feel like I can't help, but I'm gonna stop that, and I'm gonna just show how angry it makes me, really, because if I really just think about it and I like put myself in your shoes, it really fucking infuriates me if I like see the things that like other women have to go through, and that's not something I have to even fucking worry about. I'm so blessed, you know, like to not even have to have it in the back of my mind, and all these women don't have that luxury. All the women in our lives do not have the luxury of feeling peace right now.
Yeah. We do not have that luxury. I was gonna mention that, like, the concept of minding your business and like being part of a community. Like, here's a quick story from me. Is that when I was in elementary school, I'll leave you with this. When I was in elementary school, the first time I ever saw someone pregnant or talk about being pregnant was I think maybe third grade. I had a friend. She didn't get pregnant then, but she had, she had the same signs of someone that I look back at it now that would have gone through some of that kind of abuse.
Oh no.
And I don't know what happened to her as a little kid in terms of hormones, but she had large breasts as an 8-year-old, and she was having her period as young as 6 years old.
Oh.
And so the idea of being sexualized just for myself, like I can't, like before we got together, I could not stand someone calling me pretty or beautiful because I was sexualized as a kid. And I can't imagine the life for her that she had to fucking go through looking like an adult woman as a 6-year-old. And the amount of men who would have probably gladly taken her picture if she had been like at a school, elementary school pool party or something, and the amount of men who would have been staring from the windows from your neighbors looking at her as a child. That bothers me more. And the fact that that's not talked about within our small communities is what's causing all these issues of people being like not being able to live their life because of the sexual assault they eat. And so, with that, when I was a little kid and being called pretty by like strangers, like I knew what they were implying. I knew what they were talking about when they made certain gestures, when they held me a certain way. I can't stand a certain fabric because that was the fabric that was used when I was wearing the dresses as a little kid. And I hate them rubbing on my chest, that fabric, because of something that happened a couple of times.
No.
And so I can't stand that fabric. And anytime, and I told you the other day there was a fabric on a shirt that I needed to throw away.
Now I understand a little more. Yeah.
I'm like, this fabric makes me feel like I am
like you're being
disgusting.
Victimized, or you're disgusting.
Like I'm disgusting, like I'm filthy, like I'm just not a person. And that's how children feel when they're sexualized and further on in life. And something I've noticed, and this is why I want people to understand that women's rights is important, and included in that package is mental health help. And people understanding the concept of being sexualized is not a good thing from an early age at all, pedophilia especially. And that's why I want women's rights even more, because it saves us from that, because we who have gone through it know where they are. We know who's exactly doing it when you let us get in their business, when you let us talk to those children, when you let us voice our concerns because we've experienced it.
So much generational trauma.
Yeah. And I want to leave with this note of understanding that that women's rights is a whole package of wanting to be better. And the fact that we don't call it human rights, like, which we should be, it should be further, like you should understand that the word woman is not bad. The word female is not bad. Like, it's okay to be woman. And
though, I mean, I hate when guys sometimes use like, oh, these females, but I hear women use it too.
And I hate when men talk like that.
Yeah, I don't think everyone uses it with a negative connotation, but I think it's out. If you use the word female referring to a woman, it's out.
Yeah. But anyway, so as I was saying about women's rights and being
human rights,
at the end of the day, we're all still on the same boat. We all benefit from it. And to deny that from ourselves is completely illogical and self-sabotage. And we have the mental ability to be flexible. We have the mental ability to change our minds. Mm-hmm. And if I can change someone's mind who was older than me, way older than me, I changed one of my friends' mind about a specific thing. You can train your parents to change differently. The thing is, you have to want to change.
Yeah, they have to want to change too. And I think for a lot of people it's hard, but if the people around you aren't changing, maybe you need to make some changes in who you have around you. I mean, it's tough.
Yeah. And with the concept of my elementary school that I also went, there's other stories, but I wish I hadn't minded my business about a specific thing that I experienced or didn't understand. Some kid in my class, I didn't know he was hitting on me, but he brought a condom to class and like showed me, and I was just kind of like
How old were you?
6th grade. And he was showing me the condom. He's like, people have sex with this. And I'm like, okay. He's like, I'm
Where
going to
are-
have sex with it. I'm like, okay.
Where are these people?
I don't fucking care. They're
Oh, but-
fucking. I'm sorry for the family. I'm sorry for the people they're raising now because they have kids, probably.
Oh no.
But anyway, at the same time, a girl in my class had just told me that she was pregnant, and we were 11.
Oh man.
And so many boys, even in our 6th grade class, were sexualizing her because her breasts were going. Like, you need to teach your children better. Like, if you're, that's not okay, you know? Like,
I mean, it's just like some things are like biological, but you could still teach your kids better and be like, look, you're going to feel these things. You're going to start noticing this. Be a better person.
There's biology, and then there's the desire to want to be wild without dealing with the consequences.
Yeah, it's like weird societal fetishization.
Yeah, of just people. Like, I hate the concept of men saying, like, I can't control myself. Like, you just look so hot. It's like, yeah, you can. You could just shut the fuck up. Just not say anything. Just think back to this. Someone's going to read this in a historical article of human behavior. We're not right in the head. We're not correct. We're not. You need to question your logic. Question your logic. Question why you do things a certain way, why you sit a certain way, why you drink a certain way, and why you talk a certain way. Like, why do you feel mad at one person, and why do you talk bad to this person, but you talk greatly to this person? And it's something I wanted to point out when we had that talk, when we were having that long talk.
What talk?
Relationship a couple weeks ago.
Okay.
One thing I mentioned to you during that conversation that we had a couple of weeks ago is kind of how you talk to me versus how you talk to your friends. And you've been doing a lot better now, but like, I've seen it in other relationships with other men where it's really bad that they won't even look at the girl when they talk to them. Or like when I was first around your friends, when I first started hanging out with you, like, they wouldn't turn their chest to me and they wouldn't turn themselves to me. It's like they wanted nothing to do with me. And
I don't think they meant that, but yeah, it's like the body language was saying it.
The body language was saying, woman, turn away, you know, and it's not their fault, really. It's just that if they don't question that, and if you don't question that, like your behavior around certain genders, you know, imagine how disrespectful you look. Imagine how disrespectful you seem if you don't treat this person how you treat everyone else, you know. And that's something I wanted people to understand here, is that you do have a bias, and you need to work with the fact that you have a bias, and it's okay to admit that you're incorrect about certain things. And it's an absolutely beautiful thing to want to like correct that behavior. It's a beautiful, like, what's the goal at the end of the day? You know, are you okay with being miserable for 10 years from now because suddenly you don't want a woman who has a mind of her own? Or do you want to actually be with a person who loves you and comforts you, and you comfort them and love them back because you finally you finally unclenched your bullshit. Like, you unclenched your manly bullshit. Like, at the end of the day, how manly you are, like, you're still gonna end up in the same grave we are. We're all dying the same. It's fine. Like, you're gonna perish. It's fine. Like, you can be nice to women. You can be nice to people.
Well, I think that's a good way to leave it off. Yeah. You can be nice to people. Anything else you'd want to say?
Have a wonderful day.
We'll see you guys next time.